vengeance!
Pick the pace car! What for? Because you hit every other damn thing out there, I want you to be perfect!
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. It's him. He talks to me.
Well, I wanna be a race car driver. Pretty girls eating from my hand, yeah. Wanna live a life of fun and danger. No sweater working for the man, alright.
Good evening, race fans. Welcome to the Hoobazoo Radio Network, and welcome to Drafting the Circuits. My name is Frank Santoroski. I'll be your host for the next hour as we talk about this past week in racing. Joining me in the studio, Luis Torres and Richard Youden. Guys, how we doing?
Good, thank you.
Pretty splendid.
Pretty splendid, right. And speaking of splendid, Scott Dixon won his 6th IndyCar championship this past weekend, and we like to devote the first bit of the show to 2020 in review for the IndyCar series because that season is now over. It's definitely been one of the most different and most interesting seasons in IndyCar racing. But again, you know, that's been all of sports this year. Everybody is trying to cope with the differences in the COVID and, you know, can we have fans? Can we not have fans? Can we travel here? Can we not travel there? So IndyCar managed to scrape out a 14-race season over the course of 141 days. We had only visited 7 different venues. We had double headers in a lot of places. We visited the Indianapolis Motor Speedway on 3 different dates. But at the end of the year, it's not a very different story with Scott Dixon taking title number 6, but not without a staunch challenge from Josef Newgarden, who came on strong at the end of the year. Now, if you recall, Dixon, you know, railed off 3 wins to start the season. But Dixon's come on strong. Newgarden's come on strong. Dixon stumbled a bit, but at the end of the day, Josef did everything he needed to do in St. Pete, which should have been the season opener, but was the season closer. Won the race, but Dixon finished on the podium and took home that championship. So, Louise, I know you watched this race. Let's talk about it a little bit because it was a very interesting race. A lot of odd things happened in there.
For sure, and a lot of those odd things happened to more in particular the 2 guys that just could not get any luck going until the final few bit of races where you saw a Will Power and Alexander Rossi finally put on superb results of where they belonged. They both had their own problems. Power started on the pole, he led, and then he was out of the race all of a sudden. And then from there, it just built up the craziness and the chaos, like Steve Letarte always tends to say, chaos. With the weather being a woeful concern, you had the pace car running out of fuel. You had guys that are trying to save their careers. Their days were over, like Oliver Askew, whose tenure in McLaren ended pretty much like the second half has been just disastrous. And then you have guys like Pato O'Ward, who was right up in the mix, but just could not catch Josef when it mattered most. And in the end, it was Newgarden who equaled Scott Dixon with 4 wins apiece to wrap up this season, and a valiant second half effort. And speaking of other guys that had high hopes, Scott McLaughlin, who had a tremendous pace in practice, was just trying to adapt from these type of cars, just kind of bit him ultimately, and he ended up having an exit. But nonetheless, he felt he was satisfied in a way to get an IndyCar start, because remember, he was supposed to debut in the GMR Grand Prix in the month of May before everything went down with the virus and everything. So overall, it was quite the wild race that we saw the guys that did really well all throughout the year do good, and the ones that just had bad luck just continued to have bad luck, and it ended that way. Even Colton Herta, who finished 3rd, hang on to it. It was still not a great day. He finished 11th, whereas like a team that struggled all season long for the most part had one of their highest points with Sebastian Bourdais finishing 4th. It kind of shows to how masterful Bourdais is at St. Pete, no matter what team he drives.
Yeah, and it's funny. The whole St. Pete race was a bit of a microcosm of the Andretti Autosports season. You know, a lot of promise, a lot of good stuff. Those guys were dynamite in qualifying. You know, they were dynamite in practice. you had Hinchcliffe start near the front. Marco was not at the very back like you usually expect him. Hunter Ray was in the mix. Rossi was right up there near the front. But at the end of the day, none of these guys were in the mix. Rossi led several laps on the day, ended up in the wall. Marco was trying to desperately move up one position in the point standings in order to get that leader circle money. End up getting, he got Sato'd, right? Got a little tangled, got mixed up in Takuma Sato's mess there. Ended up missing, the $1 million leader circle money. That's the team will be sorely trying to replace that. So, horrible season overall for the Andretti team. Other than Colton Herta, of course, who is the bright spot of that team. He's the future of that team, in my mind, unless Penske's going to snatch him up when a contract year comes up. But Alexander Rossi, who's showed so much promise year after year as the championship contender, once again comes up short, and very disappointed.
Over.
Very disappointed.
It was honestly over before it even started. Remember, at Texas, the car just did not go, and that kind of symbolized everything that went down. Since he joined the IndyCar Series in 2016, he has won at least one race a year. This year, none. I think, if I recall, he barely hanged on to that top 10 in the championship draw, and it was ahead of Felix Rosenqvist, who finished, even though he had that one winner in America, he finished outside the top 10, which you could consider a very disappointing season in that hindsight, because Rosenqvist did great. Rossi, what helped him is getting that strong set of races at Mid-Ohio and the Harvest Grand Prix. If it wasn't for that, I'd imagine Rossi would be much lower in that trail.
Yeah, certainly. So let's just kind of review some of the highlights of the season. Obviously we talked about the season started off at Texas with no fans. Dixon ripped off 3 wins in a row. Race 4, Rosenqvist won. And then from there, the other winners this year included Takuma Sato, who became a 2-time Indy 500 winner. Then, like everything else, he still can't get the respect. Here at the end of the year, we're talking about people getting Sato'd again, and about I've heard people call it dumb decisions that he makes. I don't know if they're dumb decisions or if you prefer to call them aggressive moves. But certainly the Indianapolis 500 was his day in the sun, albeit with no fans. But he was spot on all day long, right there when it mattered, holding off Dixon. Unfortunately, we had the anticlimactic finish with the yellow there. But Richard, you've been quiet, and you're old buddies with Sato. But I know you don't want to spend all your time talking about Sato. But what are some of your impressions of the 2020 season?
I think they did a great job at, as a lot of sports have done, and we've spoken about before, reacting to this 2020 and everything that it's thrown at us all. But, they've got to take credit for that. And I think the, outside of the driver performances, the news that NBC had seen I think it was a 2% uptick in viewership is great for the sport, especially some of the smaller teams who are going to be going out looking for sponsorship and looking for companies to back them in the next few years. If that trend continues, then it's going to make the sport far more viable. I think it's been a really, really good year, and the driving's been good. I think some of the up and coming kids that you expect, like the Colton Hertas that we mentioned earlier. Pato Award, been very, very impressive. And, probably still a little bit of disappointment by some of the more experienced drivers. There's 2 that I always stick out to me that I think struggle a little bit, and you wonder where the next step in the sport is. But Graham Rahal and Marco Andretti, I think, competent drivers, but I really think, Marco needs to look at what he's bringing to that team. And, similarly, I know it's family business and everything, but sometimes those hard questions have to be asked.
Yeah, Marco was, he's been a bit of a disappointment over the years. He has had flashes of brilliance, but this year was a total throwaway for him. I want to say he finished outside of the top 21, so there's no leader circle money for him. I want to say he finished last in points amongst full-time drivers. Is that correct, Luis?
I wouldn't be awfully surprised considering he had more last place finishes than anybody of the entire grid. And if Brock Beard was here, and I keep track of the IndyCar last place finishes, he would have been the little last place champion of that regard. It's been a disappointing season. You thought that maybe the Indianapolis 500 would be a dramatic change by winning the pole. He was non-factor. He's been a disappointment for the last several years, which is kind of a shame because you expect him to be right up there, consistently good on the ovals and some of the other tracks he's ran for a long time. But this year, he's just like the year before, a complete afterthought. You mentioned Graham Rahal. Rahal has pace. He has strong cars. It's just a couple times the strategy didn't work out. The pit crew flopped in some aspects, like making mistakes. And it's like with Rahal, you feel like could be there, but it's kind of like similar with Bourdais in the last several years. There, but one bad rut puts him out of contention. And to add on disappointment, Simon Pagenaud is another one. We talk about Newgarden, we talk about power. Pagenaud's kind of like been the complete most afterthought driver of the Penske bunch. Even with one start, Scott McLaughlin, he brought more noise than Pagenaud this entire season. And you may wonder.
Simon won a race this year.
Well, besides that,
okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that puts some, at least that over Graham and Marco.
He's got that Iowa win, but like with Felix, after their wins, it's just been completely MIA for the most part. That's why I'm trying to get my point across. So,
right. So let's real quick talk about the one of the most highly anticipated teams joining the series full time, which would be the Arrow McLaren Schmidt Peterson effort. And at the end of the day, we had Pato Ward finished. Was it fourth in points for the year?
Yep, he got fourth.
He got fourth. Yeah. So this is a team that some folks wanted to see them fail, with folks that wanted to see them fail because of the whole Hinchcliffe thing, right? That being cast aside, they hired two young guys, two guys out of that came through the Indy Lights and the Road to Indy Ladder Series. Okay, highly touted. A lot of folks questioned the decision to have two really young guys in there. One guy is straight up rookie, and then Pato, who had 7 or 8 starts to his credit last year in Carlin cars. But at the end of the day, they were competitive week in and week out. They weren't winning left and right, but I think Pato had 3 podiums. Askew got a podium. At the end of the day, Askew lost his job at the end of the year, but Pato certainly, his season after the disappointment he suffered last year, with the anticipation of going in with a full-time ride with the Harding-Steinbrenner team, having that fall through, getting a part-time gig with the Carlin team, trying to make the best of that, being signed as a Red Bull junior driver, having that fall through, the McLaren thing comes back to him, and now he's made the best of this and really finishing off top. And there have been some fantastic quotes out there from some of his competitors, including Scott Dixon, who said Pato's one of the best guys on the track.
Yeah, it's a complete 180 of a season for Pato. It's just not just this season, his entire career, because it looked like after the whole Super Formula thing didn't pan out, he had the one weekend where he ran a Formula 2 race. It seems like we're going to lose that great talent that I feel like Mexico needs once Paris' time comes, whether it's Formula 1 or IndyCar or vice versa. You need someone from Mexico to kind of root on, not just because my heritage are from that country, albeit I was U.S. born and all, but it's good to see somebody like him that is passionate, driven, fast, and can get the job done. Not to discredit Askew, he's gotten the job done up until the Indianapolis 500 where things went off the rails, and ultimately now he's a free agent with an unknown path whether or not he'll have an IndyCar ride in 21. But he's done a phenomenal job. He knows what he's doing. He overcomes adversity, and I would not be awfully surprised if he gets that elusive win in 21. I feel like expectations are real high next season to get that win and maybe be that guy that could stop the Penske and the Ganassis on a consistent basis.
Yeah, certainly. I think Pato was one of the great talents, and he's right up there with Colton Herta as somebody who has really come out of the Road to Indy Series with a serious future ahead of him. in the series. We've seen too many guys that have, come out of Indy Lights and just kind of fizzled in the IndyCar series. We had Ed Jones and Gabby Chavez, a few other guys. Spencer Piggott, yeah, Spencer. Spencer wasn't horrible, but he never really. No. He was never really spectacular. You know what I mean?
No. Yeah, well, compare him to what VK was able to do in his rookie season. It's a night and day difference.
Oh, for sure, yeah. So, and VK, of course, took home Rookie of the Year honors. He is signed again with Ed Carpenter for next year. So that's good that he's going to get a second year under his belt. And speaking of back to the McLaren team there, so Askew is out. We've known that for a bit. But Felix Rosenqvist is moving over from Ganassi to join the McLaren team. So, Richard, what are your thoughts of that pairing now? Certainly, Rosenqvist he's got 2 years under his belt in IndyCar, but prior to IndyCar, he's a pretty darn experienced guy. He's not a rookie. He's not a rookie. He's not a youngster. He's not a guy on his way up the ladder. He's a very established driver from other series that he's running. So, how do you like this pairing of Felix and Pato?
I think it's going to be something that McLaren need a little bit of experience there. They need a little bit of solidity. Bringing Pato through, I think he's going to be he may be the guy that is there in 3, 4, 5 years time as they obviously look to progress. I mean, at the end of the day, McLaren are there to win. McLaren don't do these sort of things to make it the numbers. So they're going to be certainly there for the long run, and I think it's good for them. I think they've got a solid driver lineup, nothing spectacular, nothing crazy in terms of budget, and I think it's a good solid foundation for them to build on.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think that's a team I'm excited to watch next year, and this is one that could develop into a bit of a team rivalry where we see teammates going toe to toe with one another, rather than some of the other teammate matchups have been a little too polite. But I think these, and I'm not saying these guys won't be polite with one another, but I kind of envision where like a Dixon and Franchitti kind of thing, where the both guys are consistently winning and just having a great time with it, having a great rivalry.
Yeah, for sure. And Felix is one that can be vocal on some things when it doesn't pan out. Look at Laguna Seca last year; he was very, very vocal on how the qualifying and the rules and all that happened. So having a guy that doesn't shy away from six could bring some stability. Maybe a little bit of a baggage to a degree, but when it comes to personality, it's something that you need sometimes. Someone that isn't afraid to say how he really feels about certain concepts, because we don't really have that much other than willpower on a frequent basis.
Yeah, but the other thing about Felix is there's a little speculation as to why he would leave Chip Ganassi's stable, and there's a few different theories out there. Theory number one, of course, is that NTT, being that they're the series sponsor now, is going to pull their backing away from the number 10 car, and so he was looking for a funded driver. Now Alex Palou signed today to drive that car. Now Alex drove for Coyne this year. He had a pretty fine rookie season, got a podium early on. The rest of the year he was always strong in qualifying. But he just, I don't know if it's all him or the team or whatnot, but failed to capitalize a lot during the rest of the year. But he was always strong in qualifying. So now he's, moving up in the world from a Coyne car to a Ganassi car, and he's bringing some funding along. So that's theory number one. Theory number two is that Chip Ganassi offered Felix a pretty lowball offer of a salary. That Felix felt should have been a little more, particularly considering he won a race for the team this year. So he sought to look elsewhere, and then when McLaren heard that Felix was available, that kind of coincided with them, cutting ties with Oliver Askew, and then that was the match made in heaven. Felix's other option was to, go back overseas and race in Formula E. So
Which would be where he was before moving to IndyCar, to my knowledge. He was like really, if I recall, Richard, he was very, very successful in Formula E, right?
He's been a successful driver pretty much wherever he's been.
right, because he ran what? He was in DTM for a while, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the same series that
Same as Wickens.
Robert
Yeah,
Wickens.
that's
Yep,
what Wickens
Robert
was.
Wickens, right? Certainly. So,
But
all right,
yeah,
so that's good. That's going to be a good pairing. Next year, McLaren. I think Palou at Ganassi. The jury's out. We'll have to see. Again, at the end of the day, the Ganassi team is built around Scott Dixon. It has been since Dario retired. The fact that Felix has been pretty competitive in the car is encouraging for Palou. At the same time, Marcus Ericsson is back in the car again. He had a pretty good campaign this year. Nothing crazy, nothing spectacular, but nothing
he
horrible.
kept himself out of trouble, which was
Exactly,
really
yeah.
for him.
Yeah, I mean, bringing the car home in one piece with a decent points-paying day is something that most team owners are not gonna give you a lot of crap over. So, and Marcus has signed for another year, so Ganassi is going to be 4 cars strong next year, right? With that 4th car being Jimmy Johnson.
With the Carvana.
With Carvana, Carvana. So Carvana, for you folks unfamiliar with them, they're a brand new sponsor to auto racing. They've not sponsored any cars yet, but that's the online dealer. They have the giant car vending machines. I don't know if you've ever been to some of the major cities that have those, but you see them in the commercial and you wonder, oh, is that thing real or that's just something they made for the commercial? No, they had these crazy car vending machines. I saw one down in Nashville, right? And they give you like a giant coin. You put the coin in the thing, and then your car is brought down on hydraulic jacks. Yeah, it's pretty. It's clever. It's cute. At the end of the day, it's a gimmick.
Does it take quarters?
No, you have to have that giant coin. Because my question with the Carvana vending machine is like if you go to the vending machine in the hotel lobby, you want to buy a Snickers bar or a bag of chips, right? And when the little thing spins and if the thing gets stuck, you can just like pound it on the side and get your Snickers bar to drop down. I just wonder if you could do that with the Carvana machine. So. But that's
It's a neat concept.
that's my joke for the day. But at the end of the day, Carvana is a very cash rich company at the moment. They sell cars online and they're doing well. So they're putting their backing behind.
How much they sell the cars for? Yeah.
Certainly, yeah. So they're putting their backing behind Jimmy Johnson for the 13 road course races. Now the 3 oval races, that's up in the air, and everyone's name has been mentioned from Tony Kanaan to Elio Castroneves to James Hinchcliffe to Oliver Askew, and we'll just have to see at the end of the day who's going to take that car in the ovals. But we got a pretty diverse lineup at Ganassi next year, and I know, Louise, you wrote a piece about it, so I'll let you pontificate on this thought a bit.
Yeah, it's a very interesting driver combo because you have two of the best racing drivers from different disciplines, with Dixon being a 6-time champion and Johnson being a 7-time Cup champion. But Johnson is one of only 2 official rookies in this season, with McLaughlin being the other one. And then on the other end, you have Marcus Ericsson, who is slowly getting into the gist of IndyCar competition, who will be entering his 3rd year. He hasn't fully shown what he's capable of when he's put in the situation to win, but he's been very serviceable. With Alex Palou, I honestly like this ordeal, and I do have very high expectations for him to not just have a superb season to showcase. He's more than just a qualifying guy, but go out there and win races to be probably the guy for Ganassi in the future. And Ganassi is no slouch when it comes to these foreign drivers, as I mentioned in my article. Look at Dixon. He picked up Dixon when Pac West was in shambles. He gave Montoya an opportunity. Gave Alex Zanardi a career after a dwindling F1 stint. The first one, that is. The second one wasn't any better, but you get the point. But the question be, will he be a Zanardi, Montoya, and Dixon, or a Nicholas Manassin, Darren Manning?
Nicholas Manassin. I haven't heard that name since 2000.
it could go either way, but I don't feel like Palou will fall in the Manning and those guys. I think he's going to be right up there, competing right away. It's just a matter of, can he show it on race day, which you mentioned it earlier. He hasn't had the results besides the one podium, but he's been quick. And sometimes those Dale Coyne guys, when they're given an opportunity in a higher tier car, they'll go out swinging.
Yeah, well, the other thing you need to consider is there's going to come a time when Scott Dixon is going to say, "Hey, I'm done." Right? He's 40, right? And I believe he publicly said he feels like he can go for about 5 more years. And he may in fact do that. He could probably win 7 or 8 championships if he could, continue at his current pace. But we're getting to the point where you need to look to the future, so you can have Dixon mentor this young man for a couple of seasons, then have him be the heir apparent to Dixon's throne at Ganassi, for lack of a better word. And getting a young guy in there like that makes sense. It makes sense to me, and some folks are questioning the decision or saying it's only about the money because he's a ride buyer, but he's a bit more than a ride buyer. He's got some talent. So
yeah, you got to see those qualifying sessions. I think it's difficult when it's out, considering it's mostly through premium paid or paywall to see qualifying these days. So they may just see what he does during the race rather than what he can do in qualifying or a whole race weekend.
Right. So let's talk about some of the other teams very briefly before we move on. Now we talked about Rinus VeeKay, who won Rookie of the Year honors. The guy got him a pole this year. He got him a podium, and he's contracted next year to Ed Carpenter. We know Ed Carpenter's pretty good at developing guys, particularly when you look at a certain Mr. Josef Newgarden, who worked under Carpenter for a time. That dude turned out okay, I think, right? He's still around, right?
Yeah.
Newgarden? Yeah, okay.
Champion.
Thought so. 2-time champion. So the second car is up in the air. It was Connor Daly filling in on the road courses. Ed on the ovals. There's some speculation that Air Force / Space Force / military money may be interested in the full season if Connor's in the car for the full season, which would mean 2 full season cars for Ed Carpenter Racing, instead of this crazy nonsense where you have you're splitting the seat time, which really it puts you out of any contention to win a championship or to even contend for a championship when you're splitting the seat time with the one car. So maybe it's time for Ed to just decide, hey, I'll just run the ovals because, hey, guess what? There's only 3 of them this year, and enter 3 cars for those 3 races because he already enters an extra car for Indy, so you're only talking 2 more races to put an extra car in there. Or maybe Ed just wants to go Indy only and be a full-time team owner. Richard, any thoughts on that? I know you've got some contacts and some friends over with Ed Carpenter, but you hearing anything or no?
Nothing concrete. I mean, obviously they keep sort of, it's a sort of, they're a team obviously that wants to take a step up, aren't they? They want to go from best of the rest into competing with that big 3 team, and you just think you do under that question is Ed's sort of mentality for the way he wants to do the 500, holding them back a little bit, get somebody in there full time to have that ride or what have you. So I think that they're a good little team, and they as you say, they have a habit of taking on board young drivers and developing them. But it'd be nice to see if they could step up and start competing on a bit more of a consistent basis.
Yeah, certainly. And it's funny, this battle for best of the rest in in IndyCar. So the top 3 have always been since I don't think anybody besides Ganassi, Penske, or Andretti has won a championship since 2002 when Panther won, and that was the last time. So, but this is kind of bounced back and forth between Carpenter, Rahal, Schmidt-Peterson, and all these guys have upped their game, and it's kind of like a chess match. They go back and forth. I think Ed lost a little momentum when they lost the Fuzzy's vodka money Because if you look, but then now they've got the Air Force money. But the other sponsor on that car, the Sonax and the what's it called, Auto Geek.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Auto Geek has been on the car for some time.
Yeah,
Auto
Auto Geek is Tony George's business. Tony George, of course, is Ed Carpenter's stepfather. So that's family money again. So he hasn't had the big dollar sponsor since Fuzzy Zeller company decided to step away. The Air Force money is adequate enough to put the logo on the car. But if they were to up their involvement a bit, and again, you get these military sponsorships are really subject to disappearing very quickly. If you recall, the National Guard money disappeared from both NASCAR and IndyCar very quickly, as different administrations are in charge of military money. So, but hopefully, VK's got some some folks over in the Netherlands. You might want to back them a little bit. So, I think Carpenter's team has always had that potential, but they seem like they just can't get over that hump. And it's and then
for sure,
and
that's been the Achilles heel.
Yeah, I mean they've won races, but they never contended for the championship. And I honestly think that 2 full-time cars would help them contend for the championship, if they ever got over that hump. But until you have the same driver in the same car for all of the races, you'll never contend for a championship.
Yeah, it's just very difficult. It doesn't matter if it's IndyCar, even it doesn't matter what discipline it is. You're gonna have a hard time finding stability or compete for a championship if you keep having different drivers and different data and different resources. It does kind of get aggravating for a long while. You need that continuity, and I think with IndyCar, you see Andretti and Penske have continuity. Ganassi not so much, aside from Dixon. Consider how many drivers have came and went the past decade. And how many times a third car or a fourth car at times come and go.
Yeah, and speaking of teams with absolutely no continuity, let's talk about the Dale Coyne team. So I felt that going into this season, I had high hopes for Santino. And he was absolutely underwhelming all season long.
Yeah.
I think it further shows that Michael Cannon played a big role on that success and the pace-wise.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt that the loss of Michael Cannon and Craig Hampson from the Coyne team has hurt them. But yeah, I felt like Santino was totally underwhelming. Now I'm not sure if he's going to be in the frame to sign with Ganassi again. Obviously, he's still got the Clydell money. That's not his family money, but it's a friend of the family who owns the Clydell Construction Company up in Connecticut, and they are very fanatical supporters of Santino. But I expect a lot more from that guy this year, and that didn't happen. Palou was out-qualified him often, but now that's an open seat at Dale Coyne, which will realistically go to the highest bidder. It could be a guy we've not even heard of at this point in time,
Yeah.
So, and then the Foyt team. The Foyt team, who had all the earmarkings of trying to get their stuff together this year, they had employed Sebastian Bourdais to run several races with them, along with Dalton Kellett, who brought some great funding to the team, and Charlie Kimball, who brought funding to the team, and Tony Kanaan to run their oval program. And the COVID-19, of course, wrecked all their plans, and Bourdais did not sit in a Foyt car. He ran the car in preseason testing, and every race Bourdais was contracted for was canceled. But he did end up in the car at St. Pete and finished 4th, which is their best finish in a number of years. I mean, I know TK got a podium at Gateway a couple of years ago, but definitely, I think that's the guy that they need in the car who can really give the engineers the proper feedback. Now, Richard, you're a race engineer and you're familiar with the feedback. How big is it for the guys in the engineering department to have a driver who can really give them incredible feedback?
Oh, huge, without any stretch of the imagination. They, when they have somebody like that involved, the input and the feedback and the just calmness that an experienced head like that can provide is phenomenal. So they will benefit, hugely from having that experience there.
So now that being said, I just feel like they didn't benefit a lot from TK for a couple of years. I mean, I know they've had rotating doors in the engineering department too. They've had people come and go there, but it just, I don't know if all the DNFs and all the craziness at St. Pete, kind of elevated Bourdais into finishing in the top 5, but it certainly looks like this is Bourdais is a real engineer's guy.
Oh yeah, I think he is, and some drivers are that. You can have experienced drivers that just don't get it, that don't provide the good feedback or the good input. But I think certainly you will see that with Bourdais. I think he's got that experience and that little bit extra sort of input into the team.
Yeah, and Bourdais is confirmed for a full season at Foyt next year. Which will be great to see Sebastian back in the series full time. Everything else at Foyt's up in the air. Charlie Kimball would like to return. Dalton Kellett still has the K-line money. Tony Kanaan still would like to do a do-over on his farewell tour, just on the oval races. That may happen in the number 48 car, Chip Ganassi for. With Jimmy Johnson, or it may indeed happen at Foyt. So we'll have to see what happens there. But at the end of the day, the IndyCar season is over. Quickly, it seems to be. It was like 141 days. But it's nice that it really went into October because the last couple of years we've been ending around Labor Day. So, but speaking of seasons ending, we've got. The NASCAR season is drawing closer and closer to that final race, and we race in Texas on Wednesday.
We finished it on Wednesday.
We started it on Sunday, and the weather didn't cooperate. But at the end of the day, it was Kyle Busch taking the win, which was too little, too late. But but it saves his 16-year-long streak of winning at least one race every year, although it really could have helped him earlier in the year because he's already been eliminated from the playoffs. But now, Richard or Louise, what do you guys want to kind of jump in and let's talk about who's in, who's out?
Right now, it's just still Joey Logano that is in the championship war with his win at Kansas. Kevin Harvick has over 40 points to the good. It may take about 2 stages of strong runs into 2 stages to get him in, but Denny Hamlin onwards, it's up for grabs. Where if Hamlin, he's still in, but just only about 24 or so points. If he has a bad outing, his dream season is done for, and that is not. And Hamlin has been regressing. He said it during these post-race video conferences that sometimes results can be deceiving. Yeah, he may have finished 3rd or 4th, but he may not have had a 3rd or 4th place, or he may have had a top 15. And this is absolute disastrous for Hamlin to be in that spot going into Martinsville, to not assure himself. It's Martinsville. It's a night race. It's the cutoff race. It's going to be chaotic. Martin Truex Jr. needs to win.
Is it a night race?
Yeah. It's going to end at night.
Oh my God! Okay. 2 years ago, I went to the Halloween race at Martinsville, and it was a day race.
Logano won, right?
Huh? No, Kyle Busch won the year I went. It might have been 3 years ago.
Oh.
It's the one where Denny Hamlin wrecked. Denny Hamlin wrecked Chase, but it was so cold. I mean, we were freezing in the stands, bundled up in blankets. I just can't imagine how much colder this is going to be on a night race at this time of year.
Texas was cold.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what was said. But the
cold, cold affects the cars, it affects the tires. So, But wow,
And
I didn't realize it was a night race. And that's just crazy to have a night race at Martinsville in October.
To briefly wrap up my chase rundown, Truex, Kyle Busch inadvertently might have cost Martin Truex Jr. a shot in the championship 4, because Truex finished second, Christopher Bell got third. But of course, you have the PJ1, you have the track, you have the package, a lot of things that might have factored in why Truex didn't win. But at the end of the day, Kyle Busch winning was probably the absolute worst thing that Truex would have won in this situation. Yes, he's won in Martinsville twice now. He's no doubt one of the favorites. But that points penalty that he got during the pre-race on Sunday really probably bit him in the butt. And guys that really need to deliver along with Truex is Chase Elliott and Kurt Busch. Kurt Busch is done for unless he wins. He's well over 80 points behind the cutoff line. Elliott is in dire straits of a win. So that's what you have right now. Keselowski is hanging on by an absolute thread right now. He's hanging on by a thread.
Yeah, but let's talk about the guys who are hanging on by a thread or trying to get in and their relationship with Martinsville. Denny Hamlin has won several races at Martinsville. It's his home race. Keselowski is your most recent Martinsville winner. Well, he won this race last year. Truex has won a couple times at Martinsville. So this Martinsville race has the shapings to be a battle. Mm-hmm. It really does, because there's so much at stake for these guys, and only one of them can win it, and then only another guy can kind of sneak through on points. And it's so close. It's so close. It's going to be they're going to be pulling out all the stops there, so that'll be exciting to watch. So.
Most certainly.
Most certainly, yeah.
But with that on the line, oh man, we're gonna have a beast of a battle that'll come down to the last lap, and maybe a couple chrome horns.
Oh yeah. Martinsville is famous for. I'll tell you a funny story. I never really followed NASCAR racing a lot. I was a big, I started watching sports cars and Formula One when I was young. I kind of started watching IndyCars. And even then, I didn't really like IndyCars on ovals a lot. The first IndyCar race I went to was at Watkins Glen. But I knew NASCAR existed. I was a little cognizant of it, but I really was never hooked on the sport until I went to a NASCAR race. And the first NASCAR race I went to was at Martinsville. And I'm like, man, this is crazy. This is awesome. And I really enjoyed it. I've followed the sport ever since. Yeah, and it was I want to say at the end of that day, Jeff Bodine won the race, but you had everything in the world happened there, from the leaders, the two guys leading who happened to be teammates. I think it was Ricky Rudd and somebody else crashed into one another to open the door for Jeff Bodine to take the lead. But yeah, I mean, Martinsville has the potential to produce a really fun battle. So. That being said, let's move on and talk about Formula One. Formula One, we're heading to Imola.
Yeah.
Yeah, but before
2-day weekend too.
2-day weekend, yeah. Before that, but let's discuss the past race where Lewis Hamilton, who's your countryman, has now taken the record.
Yes, indeed, and he is now the winningest Formula One driver. God, I hate that word.
Winningest? Yeah, I don't think winningest is the real word. Yeah, every time I try to, when I'm writing a story, I write winningest. It just gives me that little squiggly red underline. Yeah, so, but we always use that word. So, we
do. But no, he eclipsed Michael Schumacher's record of 91, so he's now got 92 race wins. At another new track for the teams, Portimao in the Algarve there in southern Portugal. Again, as we've seen before a number of times this season, Valtteri dominates all three practice sessions, and then Hamilton comes up when it counts on Saturday afternoon and nicks the pole. Very impressive lap again. Great performance there by Lewis. He certainly can't knock him for that. But then beyond that, going into the race, it was sometimes you look at Mercedes and you think they're just the fastest car, period. They just go out there and win. But what they did this weekend, I thought was super impressive. The tactics that they implied with the tyre choices. So in Formula One, the second qualifying session that decides the top 10. The tyres that you set your fastest lap in Q2 on are the tyres you start the race on. And both Mercedes cars started on the medium compound tyre, the yellow sidewall tyre, whereas typically you'd start on the softest compound tyres to set the fastest lap. But Mercedes were quick enough to get into the final qualifying session on the medium tyre. And, that obviously is an advantage because you can run a little bit longer on the first period, on the first stint, and control the race.
Yeah, but
for the first 3 or 4 laps, it looked like it was Bambi on ice. The Mercedes were all over the place, slipping and sliding. A number of times I thought Hamilton had an issue there. Maybe his curves or his airs wasn't working. But all they were struggling was, it was cold, it was a little bit of drizzle. They were just struggling to get heat in the tyres, whereas the soft tyre runners like Carlos Sainz Jr. and McLaren, they got out there and they did they sort of took the lead, and you thought, this is going to be great. Anyway, as soon as they got heat in the tyres at the Mercedes, they went up into the distance. Bottas took the lead with Hamilton following, and then it's pretty early in the race, Hamilton passed Bottas and pulled away quite comfortably. When they made the stops towards the end of the race, Hamilton went into the hard tyre and Bottas was wanting to go onto the medium, but the team, go onto the soft to try and catch Hamilton, but the team overruled that one, and unfortunately they were just a little bit processional to the end there. But Lewis got his 92nd win, and I don't think you can deny him that. He's thoroughly deserves it. And talking to some of the guys out there, reading comments by some of the guys out there, they certainly say that, if you compare the two, Schumacher probably had the better work ethic, whereas Hamilton's maybe got that little bit more, raw natural talent. And I don't think you could argue that, especially with the current generation of cars, the way he can manage the tyres and manage the performance of the vehicle is very, very impressive.
Yeah, no question about it. That's why even when those tires are dead, Hamilton still finds a way to make things work. No matter the adversity, no matter the situation, Hamilton is kind of, you could say he's the student of the game, right? And he's trying to know things right away, so he knows how to play the game when it matters most, and it's worked real well for him. And I think that's why you see him where he is right now, from even going back to day one when he was with McLaren in 2007. But well, even before that, when he was in GP2, you could certainly see, the potential that he had, was phenomenal. So you can't knock him for that. No, because Hamilton, I was watching the season opener on YouTube. A GP2, they were highlighting certain drivers who's going to be the favorites, who's going to be all those guys. I think Alex Premont, I think only one of them mentioned Lewis Hamilton deep into the guys to watch. And little we know, the one further was the most successful of the entire bunch compared to those that either just never got that F1 opportunity despite having such success in the lower levels and even A1 GP.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, he's certainly been, I don't want to say groomed because I think that's the wrong word, but he's certainly been, built up for a number of years to sort of have that success. He's part of the McLaren Young Driver program and the like. So, you certainly have to give him credit where credit's due.
Yeah. Now, Richard, I want to throw this question at you, and it's more of a cultural question than a racing question. But there's some talk that Lewis Hamilton should be knighted for this accomplishment. And now I know there's an MBE and an OBE and I don't know.
CBE.
Yeah, so now evidently Lewis already has one of these.
Yes.
Is it the OBE?
Yeah. There is a sequence to it I think there is some sort of sequence to it.
Yeah, so now I don't know that the honor of being knighted has been given to people in sport plenty of times, Sterling Moss for sure, Jackie Stewart, So, I mean, what are your thoughts on this? Just as a member of the British Empire yourself, is this I don't know. I don't know what you compare it to in the United States, getting a medal of freedom or something or whatever.
Yeah, Presidential Medal of Freedom.
Yeah, but
I think
personally, I feel like probably not out of line to award this to Lewis. So, but just let me get your thoughts on it.
I think any of these awards of this standing, my personal opinion is they should be given to especially to a sports person post career. Once he's retired and he's off doing whatever, breeding dogs or whatever it is. I think that's where you step up with that sort of recognition and that sort of award. I don't think that it's something that you would give during a career. I may be wrong in that, but that's just my personal opinion.
Oh, I was just wondering what your.
I'm not saying he does.
Yeah, I was just wondering what your opinion was. I don't know if it's like you can win an Academy Award, while you're.
Yeah.
Why have it? But the lifetime achievement award. So this being knighted is more of like a lifetime. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, you wouldn't give a lifetime achievement award to a 20-year-old actor, would you really?
Right. Okay. All right. So no, I just kind of because it's cultural differences interest me, and but that makes perfect sense that the knighthood will be something reserved for as his racing career comes to a close.
Anyway. That's certainly my opinion, and I can't think of many active athletes that have had that knighthood honour for sure. I can't think of any. Maybe wrong, but yeah. I mean, Bradley Wiggins got one, the cyclist, but whether he'd retired before he finished, I'm not sure. But a lot of the, and typically you'd give it to an athlete who is also, heavily involved in charity work and the like. And I know Lewis has done a lot for,
just this year alone has shown that example.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but I think there's no doubt he deserves to be knighted, at the end his career, so yeah. So we're off to Imola.
Yep.
So Ferrari's going to win?
No.
and neither will Renault. They will not win either.
No, I think it's going to be Mercedes win again. They deserve it. I mean, they're just too good right now. Nobody can touch them. They've got everything working, and it's all synced up well, and it's like a well-oiled machine, literally. And you can't knock them for being good.
So how many races until Lewis can just clinch the championship?
One or two, isn't it? I think.
I was going to say, I want to say he could probably.
It will be this week. I think he could probably do it at Turkey, maybe.
I'm thinking Turkey, but definitely Bahrain. He'll have it either if it's in the original layout or the quote-unquote oval.
Well, yeah. So it'll be, he deserves it. You can't knock him. He's been very impressive again this year. Valtteri's had flashes of brilliance, but not on a consistent enough basis.
I do believe they'll clinch the constructors this Sunday, though.
Yes. Yeah.
Especially if Albon doesn't score much or Max has his occasional issues with the car. But we're going to have to wait and find out because, again, like I mentioned, 2-day weekend. They kind of have that experience already when at the Nürburgring. So could we see a similar story? Time will tell. When it comes to reliability and...
Oh, sure, yeah. I mean, Formula One always, it seems to me they have an overkill on practice sessions. So for them to try a shortened weekend, I think is a very neat experiment, yeah.
I mean, it could be worse. It could be like back in the day when there were 4 or 5. I think 3 is the magic number, but I honestly always forget there's a third practice. I think like the 2 practices, then qualify. I don't really think much of the third session at all.
Yeah, that hour before. Mind you, that the session that's taking the free practice 3 slot is going to be an hour and a half rather than the hour.
No, for sure.
So they do get a little.
This week is different, but the other times where there's just 3 practices, then the third one is kind of like the forgotten one.
In a way, yeah, it's a little bit of a funky session there, but yeah, I don't know if that's necessary. I like the 2 on the Friday, but yeah, I don't know if that's necessary on the Saturday morning.
Yeah, because in the States, they used to show only the second practice on speed, highlights of the first one, and then that's it for coverage until qualifying.
Yeah.
Back in the day, I remember this. What was it like? They had qualifying, they had like 4 or 5 practice sessions, then the warm up, and then the race.
No, yeah. I mean, they used to have like a Sunday morning warm up in the same way that IndyCar does.
Yeah, that's one of the
right. Yeah. Oh heck, back in the
Yeah.
first Formula One race I went to, they had practice on Thursday.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was
that was sometimes the pre-qualifying, wasn't it?
Yeah, because you had more. Yeah, you had guys that you had to knock those guys out before qualifying. Yeah, so.
But those were back in the days when you'd have you'd probably run 3 or 4 engines throughout the weekend. You'd have a practice engine, a qualifying engine, and a race engine. So it's a completely different sport back then.
Oh, certainly,
Yeah,
it certainly was.
engines.
Yeah.
Now it's all about tires.
And now it's all about. So we've only got a couple of minutes left, but I want to talk about Pierre Gasly, who has been officially signed to stay in the AlphaTauri next year. Then here's a guy that won a race this year. So there's a lot of speculation that they would move him up to the Red Bull team, and move Alex Albon out to, the pasture to go race Formula E or sports cars, or whatever. So now it's settled that Gasly's not taking that ride, but there's a lot of other names associated with that ride, including Perez, Hulkenberg. So what are your thoughts on this, Richard? Are we gonna? I mean, Albon hasn't really earned another shot in a Red Bull for another season?
We could talk about this one. We could talk about this till the cows come home, haven't we? In many, many ways.
Yeah, but we could only talk about it for 4 minutes.
Okay, there you go. But no, I'm a very firm believer that, unfortunately, as much as Albon is a really good guy, and I think he deserves to be in Formula One at some point, I just don't think he's cut it as much as I hate to say it for the kid. He's a really, he's got potential there, but just not quite, what they're looking for. And I think that, my personal opinion is they'll pick Hulkenberg. As good as Perez is, there's a question mark over Perez. I think that maybe isn't there over Hulkenberg. I think Perez makes too many mistakes. I think Perez gets the majority of his performance from tyre management. So I just think there's maybe something missing a little bit. And
you're not wrong in that regard, because look at the starts. He's not much of a starter. Is more of a progressive guy.
He's not, and I don't want to say this in a bad way, but he's not much of a racer, whereas I think Hulkenberg is a little bit more. And I think what Hulkenberg can do with the car is maybe bring a little bit of calmness. And, also you've got to remember Hulkenberg is a very amiable guy. He's fun on the radio. He can have a laugh and a joke. Him and Danny Rick were a great combination. They played off each other really well.
And this is not to mention that Hulkenberg twice this year has had to step in on with no practice or and performed rather admirably.
Yep. Oh, for sure.
He just kind of proved his worth right there. That on short notice, hey, throw this guy in the car. And I want to say, am I mistaken in that? Max Verstappen said he would like to have Hulkenberg as a teammate.
I haven't heard. I mean, it could well have been.
Oh, well, you can't believe everything you read on social media, but
of course not. But I think definitely. What's the phrase? I think Max needs pushing. I think he needs somebody to. Give him that little bit of a drive and that push, because, again, no disrespect to Alex, he's just, Max could probably drive, with one eye open and still beat Albon.
Yeah, he needs that competition.
I would still fully expect Max to beat, Perez or Hulkenberg, but I think it would be a closer thing. And also, when you get very one-sided driver development, which is unfortunately what they have at Red Bull, you can back yourself down into a corner and maybe not look at the bigger picture. Whereas when you have another experienced driver there, like Nico Hülkenberg, who can say, well, I know you want to go down this route with the car, but have you thought about doing this? Have you thought about this setup, this configuration, this, engine map or whatever it may be? So I think it would be beneficial to the team in many, many, many ways to, unfortunately, look beyond Alex Albon and pick up somebody like Nico Hülkenberg.
For sure, yeah. And then, of course, there's open spots for other guys to land. Haas is still up in the air.
Mm-hmm.
Williams, the Perez to Williams rumors are still strong, which leaves George Russell out there for somebody to snatch up because that guy is definitely a talent. So, but with that being said, guys, we are out of time, and I want to thank you, Richard. I want to thank you, Louise. I appreciate you guys a ton. I want to thank the Hoobazoo Radio Network. I want to thank iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and Google Podcasts. And especially I want to thank all you folks that listen to us week in and week out. But until next week, good night.
WHOOBAZOO, that's Hoobazoo.com.
Enter website, enter website, enter website, enter website.